then they don't want to do it. I don't care about, I'm not here for the short game. I want to ensure there's sustainability in anything we do. There's quality, there's value.
Yes, absolutely. Great. No, let me move you on a little bit, Scratchy. Harry. The fact of the matter is that the democracy here in Jamaica requires, for its advancement, this two-party system that we have. That the one that is in government, Harry, there are checks and balances on its power, and that primarily comes from the opposition, correct?
That's correct.
Correct. Now, the government is renegotiating the JPS license. It has lent JPS 150 million US dollars, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. And at the same time, the Jamaica Public Service Company have slapped the consumers with a 7% increase. And the opposition is raising questions about it. Are those questions valid?
Neighbor, the questions stand alone, right? Because how I want to bring it up is the questions are valid because we can identify them to stand alone. The problem is...
Yeah, well, let us look at the validity of the questions first. Are they valid questions that because I'm sure you're going to go to the messengers. Are they valid questions that require some answers?
They are, because the questions are what we will need to ensure that we see some level of transparency and accountability as to why we're getting slapped with the 7% charge in a time like this. What quantifies and validates
Tell us why.
the 7%? Because the thing about it is, with what's happening, in terms of the JPS getting 150 million, it simply means they would still be able to continue their level of recovering to their infrastructure, making it better as well, and also deliver to their customers, which should be their priority, because in order to deliver for their investors, they have to deliver first to the customers, which in return they get monetary value from. Now, if you get that $150 million, which they did, it simply means this help with your operation almost in its totality. We know there's an additional sum. We won't touch on that just yet. But this simply means this is money you never have to deliver anything at all. You couldn't deliver the in the time frame that you should. You can't deliver without finding some other way to get money. And even then, they're in a pickle to be able to do that. So they were between a rock and a hard place. So in an effort, when you do get this money, you would have to say, let me forego or delay this addition, because this 150 million would have gone done a great deal, even far beyond this the 7% that they're charging, right? Because when we look at it, neighbor, the questions are asking are critical, so our people, the customers, their customers, can get the transparency. Because I want to know what I'm paying for and why I'm paying for it. This is not a puss in the bag kind of situation. Because you can't just request an increase without the why on people. I need to know the main reason, what went wrong, if something went wrong. I need to know what additional steps were taken that may need this increase in 7% or monetary amount. So the questions are very valid, neighbor. But what we're not getting, and I think I may call on the OUR to put out this information to the wider Jamaica, being that they're the Office of Utility and Regulation. They would have sat around the table and negotiate. Maybe the 7% wasn't 7%. Maybe it was higher. But they have the details, and I think people need to know so we can see if that 7% is even justifiable. So that is the thing why the questions are valid. So we can get the transparency and know who to hold accountable.
Yeah. No, why what then, Harry, the opposition has a problem here. Because, Harry, the whole matter of monumental history is really affecting the PNP's ability to be heard. Because Harry, it is the very opposition that is asking the questions that have caused the problem.
Exactly. Right. So they would have been privy, and I can't even narrow it down. There are specific, maybe 3 to 5 persons who had a direct hand in this agreement. So they very well know, and it's hypocritical of them. I'll be quite frank. It is hypocritical and disingenuous of them to be calling out and asking those specific questions. Now, again, separated from the validity of the questions. They know it because they coined, they wrote, and were a part of. And right now, neighbor, it is simply just blatantly in the people's face, acting all unknowing, acting as if they have no clue what was in that contract. And that, for me, is something I think the people of this country need to call out even more. Because this contract, under their leadership, regardless of who are the new members, right? Which is why I narrow it down to maybe the 3 to 5 persons who have direct influence on the agreement with JPS. They, if they wanted to come off with any form of credibility, should have come out and speak as to the contract itself and to pinpoint on JPS to not getting that 7%, but they can't because many of those persons may have benefited directly from that deal, whether immediately or continuously. And that in itself is also why we will call on their credibility, because they are the ones who negotiated this contract in the first place to take advantage of the Jamaican people. So it is hypocritical of them to now come and act as if they're defending the people. They didn't know they should have defended the people from the initial contractual agreement. And I'm not saying people cannot want to right wrongs, but that's not something you can right when you made no effort whatsoever to have corrected it until somebody else comes along the road to say, listen, this isn't right. This is taking advantage of our people. This is holding back the country, because I need people to understand that energy cost is not a play thing. Because the greatest thing is that if we're looking at our industries, they use that, they need that. And we've seen it in the West neighbor. There's no productivity and no production whatsoever. Right? So them coming out with these questions now, they should have just stepped back. In fact, this is the moment. I always say the opposition get layups. This should have been a vocal moment for them to potentially collaborate on saying, Minister of Energy, let us work together to try and understand what went wrong or how we can renegotiate the contract so it benefits the people.
Yeah, Harry, the existential rebirth of the PNP as they shed themselves from the shackles of their legacy. Do you think that it is possible for them to shed the shackles of this legacy and emerge like a phoenix from the ashes of their past? Do you really think they can do it?
Well, I wouldn't put it in terms of to put them in the realm of a phoenix, neighbor, right? Because a phoenix reigns supreme and rises with absolute eloquence and astonishment. It's a thing of magnificence. The opposition is far from that. But what I do know is that over time, things and people do change and evolve to exist. And as the old realm dies with age, right? Because we don't live forever. There's a tweak and twist and change of ideologies, of execution of ideologies, right? And we've seen it with rulers and empires, right? How they would have fallen, how they would have grown. It changes with the ruler. And I want to have hope and faith that they will in the near future, maybe longer than that. But as long as there is the existence and the prevalence of the old hags with those same ideologies, they will find it hard to potentially even rise like a phoenix neighbor. But it's not impossible.
Yeah, but I heard someone today, Harry, saying that that their life would have been better had it not been for the struggles of the 90s under the PNP. And it dragged me back a bit to say, I wonder if that is a largely pervasive statement in Jamaica, that somehow people find that where they are today, they would have been further ahead had it not been for that period in the PNP's history. Do you think that it is something etched in the faculties of many Jamaicans?
For those Jamaicans who care, neighbor, for those who even challenge themselves to understand even that brief moment in history, but for others who don't give a damn, quite frankly, they will not give 1 ounce of time to something that shape their very existence, right? And understand this, I've always said it. We shape society as society shapes us. It is a sociological theory, it's an ideology as well, and it reigns true up to today. It doesn't change. Because as time goes by, the more humans change, the more they remain the same as well. So, regardless of what it is, if you backtrack a generation or two, depending on who is listening and so on, you will see that it impacted your family tree, if I want to say so. The very demography of persons who were there. Simply put, the 90s removed a whole working class set of people, neighbor. 44,000 companies were wiped out of existence. Right? Persons are of no more because of the situation. That directly impacts our family. The financial status of persons who may very well would have been of great minds, great builders, innovators, had to pack up and leave. That is something, and those persons would have shaped the economy of Jamaica.
But why is it, Harry, that it is not necessarily manifested in the political fortunes of the PNP? Has it really?
Because they still benefit from the atrocities of that time, right? The wealth that acquired at that time was ridiculous, and this is the era that I'm going with it. Neighbor, you had inflation on average of 47% between 1990 to 1995, going as high as, on average, it peaked under Percival James Patterson, not as a prime minister, but as the finance minister for a year, at 80%. No.
Hold on, don't go so fast. Don't go so fast, teacher. No. tell me, Harry, with inflation at 80%, what would that do to the price of a pack of Lasco?
Neighbor, you couldn't afford it. You would have to find an alternative because the money wasn't valuable enough to even get the Lasco. Right? It was on a trajectory, and we touched slightly on the inflation when it comes down to Zimbabwe. So persons have a very good idea if they were present that day.
So please, there was a time in Jamaica when inflation was 80%.
Yep. 80%. And I'm going to.
Oh, hold on.
I even made notes of it because I was going to deep dive.
7 point something percent, and people, Mr. Ralston Hyman said that the poor people of Jamaica will not have a Christmas because of inflation. 7.2%. And you are telling me that we had inflation in Jamaica at one time at 80%? Where you getting that from?
In the period of 1991.
Where you getting
Neighbor, I'll send you the link to it. There was the article written by let me see if I made the note of the name because I was deep diving in it.
Oh.
I'll find it after to send you. But I made the notes of it because I didn't want to just come and give the people the information and just like that. I wanted to also break it down and be of the capacity.
Yes.
To break it down.
Wow.
Right? And this is just me touching in terms of the surface of it because there are things that I was looking into. It does take some time because I do appreciate a good research.
Yeah.
And this is not something I'm just going to glance over. Huh. So just like how I could have broken down one of the debacles of this period.
Yes.
That entails two opposition politicians currently. That is the least how I want to bring it across now. And that was done with detail.
Let's go.
So what happens with this? And this was between 1990 to 1995.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So with it averaging 40%, and guys, we know how average work. It means every year it may differ. All right. This is what they, at the time, Edward Seaga warned against before it happened. They did what we call deregulation, sorry, right, of the economy. Now, what was happening was that more money was chasing ways to make money, which drives up in terms of higher prices, causing inflation. Now, people would say, but if you have more money in the economy looking to make more money, it simply means production and productivity may be at a high, right? No such thing happened. Because in the same period, we had policy rates or interest rates at double digits. And I'm not speaking like a 10, 11%. I'm speaking 20 odd percent. So what happened was that these monies that was in the market, they didn't create businesses. They didn't put people to work. They were simply just invested directly into government instruments that was giving these 20 and 22, 23%. So while the money was in the economy, it wasn't doing anything for the larger economy. It never do not for poor people, put it that way there. And those above poor people, right? Because investors were taking advantage of higher inflation, which means interest rates had to increase. And these weren't even local investors. These were overseas investors who did it with the US dollar at the time. So deregulation is really the process of removing or reducing government restrictions and controls over businesses, markets, and industries in an attempt to foster economic growth that would have, let supply and demand guide decisions instead of having it being centralized, But that didn't happen because there's a flip side to deregulation. And Jamaica faced the flip side. So we didn't do the real thing that deregulation should have done. Because the flip side of it is that it causes a power shift to corporations and risk the public welfare. I'm going to repeat that part because what is coming will be shorter but more impactful. Right? So with it, let me just open this back. So with the power shift to corporations that risk public welfare, which is risking you, neighbor, me, and everybody who are listening, them pitney, them grandmother, and everybody, it risks our welfare for private gains. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
The public, the risk, sir, were for private gains?
For private gains.
Now, who is these private gains you're talking about?
It is far and few, neighbor. It would have been these overseas investors. It would have been those persons, you know, people from Jamaica say you come from money. It would have been those individuals who had the capacity to have cash or financial prowess to put money in instruments and entities that the average man couldn't. And they gained off the backs of the public. So these, you know, the instruments that I spoke of, for example, like a certificate of deposit that was giving 20%.
Government paper.
So the money was there. Government papers, notes. There's quite a number of them, right? Ranging from as low as 7 days at one point to as high as a few years.
7 days, sir? You could lend government money for 7 days?
Yep. Because of different notes, right?
Why would government borrow money for 7 days?
well, here's a trick, neighbor. At the time, the government of Jamaica was in a deficit because they were, in order to try and curb inflation, you know what they did? The great Percival James and Omar Davis, because it changed, I think 1991, Percival left to become prime minister and handed over to Omar. That's when Manley left, right? Persons can correct me in that area, but I think it's that way. Now, what happened, and we've seen it, is that they increase money supply in the market, which is the opposite of what this current administration is doing or what we're seeing DOJ doing.
They're removing, excess liquidity.
Right, because we don't want more cash chasing few goods and services, right, to drive up the price. Now, because the government was in deficit, you know what they did? They went ahead and borrowed money to fund the very budget, to fund that deficit. Now, that is one of the ways that our debt to GDP catapulted. Because now we already don't have no money, we're in the shortage, and we run go borrow to cover the money we don't have, and then we kept borrowing. So remember previously when I said we borrowed to pay borrowed money, and not in the sense of proper refinancing? We borrow it because we're short, not because we're refinancing for better deals. We borrow because we don't have it. Now, the other part to it, neighbor, we saw an annual increase in money supply, averaged at 47% between 1991 to 95. Now, Percival and Omar would have thought it's a good idea, but guess what happened? It is a known way, it's a known contributing factor to inflation and the devaluation of the dollar. So they thought putting money out there, borrowing money and all of that, while trying to mop up money. Neighbor, you see how counterproductive that was?
My God.
So you're borrowing money, you don't have money. So one hand is borrowing money, so you're bringing more money in the economy, when really and truly the other hand is trying to take it out. Counterproductivity. And in all of this, neighbor, remember, because the money is going to these government notes, it never really in the economy. So to break it down to people, simpler, this money went directly from an account. So let's say neighbor is the government, I'm an investor, I have money, I'm from overseas. It leaves my account, goes directly to the government institution, which would have been BOJ, because it's offered through that institution. So at no point in time that money went to develop a business. It didn't go for build anything.
No productive activity.
It went no production and no productivity. Hence why it is for the risk of public welfare, for private gain. So go back to the example. I'm a private investor, whether I'm living in Jamaica or not, I'm gaining from that, but the public now get nothing from it. The most, and I don't want to say that they're not benefiting, but this is what I'm going to correct it with. They would have only gotten what we call withholding tax, which would have been, I think now it's at 25%, which is chump change to what that money could have done if it was in the economy and integrated the proper way. And that is something where we saw an increase of a $10 billion debt skyrocketing to $50 billion within those 5 years, neighbor. For a small nation like Jamaica, and we created FinSac to ensure this didn't happen, but FinSac served the same purpose. So you're trying to get rid of something and you created something to contribute to it. And these were persons who they praised for their financial prowess. That made no sense. And you know who benefited from these, neighbor? Because the same set of persons who were there, because they had the affluence to put the money there and benefit as well. And then
it's a Ponzi scheme.
Have the know-how. Exactly. And have the know-how how to get it back out of the country. So again, that money didn't even stay here.
Scheme, so.
Exactly.
No,
and that is what happened.
This transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, how did that come about? How is it that the poor people, in essence, they never had any money? So how was wealth transferred from them to the rich? How?
Well, neighbor, put it this way. You see, for those persons who had good ideas and as we said, the little man was trying to do something, right? Whether it's a good business idea or structure or so on. When you have an event like this, what it does is, if you were somebody who even had the smallest of business, you couldn't keep up. Imagine you have your little shop, neighbor, right? Or your little business. Now, I could say a little hardware for the community. Doing well, I could say in the late 80s, doing fairly well, And you borrow a little money because you want to expand. You probably want a little area add-on. Fine. But then you borrow that money at 5%. Not much, right?
Cool.
Then now, you borrow from banks and so on. Going into now, you're doing your monthly payments, you turn up to the institution one day and you hear that, oh, and a $2 you did for pay this month, at 10. Then the following month you hear say at 30. This was what was happening.
That's because of the interest on the loan.
Interest, exactly. And Jamaica is not known for fixed interest rates. You'll almost never ever get it when borrowing, right? And it's something that practiced up to today's date. You, when doing a loan in Jamaica, you don't get a fixed anywhere. The most, from what I know of, maybe on your mortgage for a period, not for the whole time. And that is only done by one institution I know of. Right? And you have to meet a certain criteria as well.
Your car loans and all those things, they are not fixed?
No, not fixed. And this might be a teaching moment for persons to take a look at the fine prints. Because if persons understand...
Normally it says a fixed interest rate, but it's compounded.
Exactly. And the thing with it is that you will also see, neighbor, in the fine prints. And for persons, I think COVID would have taught persons this, where you have like the moratoriums coming in and so on. And when interest rates were changing, persons may get a notification from their financial institution 40 to 45 days in advance to say rates are being changed, because legally they have to tell you that. But you can't decide not to pay unless you're going to lose it. Now, with inflation flying, again, we said averaging 40%, and interest rates flying as well. No business could survive that, because understand this, neighbor.
You say no.
In order for your business to survive,
but some businesses did survive,
because those businesses were strategically positioned at a different area. They were the benefactors of the very FinSac. In Jamaica, them says who you know, right? Not what you know. Links, as they'd put it. So what happened was that when opportunities came about, those persons who were quote unquote strategically positioned, they could easily take your asset, which would have been your company. Because for your company to survive, neighbor,
that some of these businesses that failed were as a result of bad loans that they had on their accounts and things like that. Not true?
No, neighbor, it was just the economy. Because remember, you go to the bank and borrow at 5%. But then because of what is happening, poor fiscal management by your very government, by the very Ministry of Finance, right, caused you, who got a favorable rate at that time, to it becoming highly unfavorable. So detrimental that it was better for an individual to walk away from the business and walk away from your very nation. That was a decision persons had to make. And that is how a lot of companies went under. A lot of these companies were really good, especially manufacturing in the neighbor. In fact, greatly manufacturing, because we were doing well. We were poised for real growth in the manufacturing area. We had unique setups. And I don't have to speak to where we're geographically positioned by nature. We were able to take advantage. In fact, as well, because of our historical ties with colonizers, we were able to get preferential rates.
Like from the UK for sugar.
From the UK for sugar. So even though we were competing with the rest of the world, we weren't really competing.
Right.
Until that collapsed.
Buying sugar for preferential rates.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see the impact of that up to today, neighbor. Because we export our sugar to then import other people's sugar, because it is cheaper to do so.
Yes. Amazing stuff. Yeah.
And that is why, so to tie to the individual who said, what happened then impacted his very life. Today, it robbed us of potential, of things we could have become far sooner. And I want to bring it down to the people's level. For those youthful persons who are here, with the degrees, with the high education, who's earning pretty well, Yet still can't afford a house, but I bet your grandfather could have. So you are in a...
Say that again. Say that again.
So for the same persons who are earning, or we can classify as earning well, there are things they will never be able to achieve as their grandparents could. For example, the house neighbor. The money that a lot of persons here are earning are really good, but the value makes no sense. The value is less. And also, there are things that is overpriced because of economical issues. That was coined and set up in the past. It is as a result of. That was what happened. So of course the person is fully justified.
There's a generation then, Harry, that is alive today, as the gentleman said, that he's saying that his life was really set back by maybe 20 years, 15, 20 years because of those that government. He's correct.
Of course, neighbor. Quick, neighbor, can you imagine if that individual, his parents or grandparents or whoever it is in that family had a great business idea that could have taken off, which would have transformed the very existence of a family? Because people need to understand this. In every family, there's one who people think is the savior. But the level of work that person has to do to get to a foundational level compared to if the foundation was laid before. And this is something where we're seeing now in Jamaica society, people speaking a lot about generational wealth and building generational wealth. All of that was robbed because of what happened in the 90s. So now you're now building for several decades ago. You are now trying to lay a foundation that your parents, regardless of educational status, financial status, the fact that they didn't have the opportunity to even attempt that, they were stuck in survival mode. And I love using this example, neighbor, and it's sad because it's one of our sisters in the Caribbean. If you look at Haiti, if persons fly over Haiti, because it's on the land of Hispaniola, Dominica Republic, and Haiti. If you fly over it, neighbor, you know you're at Haiti compared to Dominica. How? One is brown, very few trees. Other one is lush and green. Now, what I'm bringing it to is, because people wanted to have heat and energy and so on, they cut down the trees because they couldn't see further down the road. They were stuck in survival mode. I need to cut down this tree to catch up wood fire and to do things, to sell it to lumber and so on, to survive. That their very existence and potential future that they could have had were simply taken away by decisions that weren't even decisions. They were automatic. In order to survive, it was automatic, and generations were amputated of those opportunities. And that is the monster that we're trying to correct. That was the beast of its time that today crippled Jamaica, crippled families, crippled an entire nation. In fact, I can be as brave as possible to say, in modern times, if we look at the latter part of slavery, neighbor, where people blame colonizers and so on, this is right up there.
Wow.
From our very people. Wow. This is because remember, in fact, then you didn't really have a choice. Right? Slavery, you're locked in, you weren't exposed to certain things. But imagine now you are, quote unquote, independent of something, neighbor. Now you can think for yourself. Now you can.
Yes, I want to move you as to you know, how we were able to correct this. And this is what Bruce Golding said. I've been trying to play it from last night, providing context. Go ahead.
For Mr. Golding. Thank you very much. The People's National Party has been in power for the last 18 and a half years. During that period, with the exception of the first 2 years, Jamaica has never achieved as much as 3% growth in any 1 year. Over that period, we have accumulated 460,000 persons who either can't find work or have given up trying to find work. During that period, we have accumulated a debt that is now costing the people of Jamaica $550 million every single day to service, more than we spend on health, education, security, and all the other government services combined. Over that period, we have seen the murder rate climb from 413 in 1988 to as much as 1,500. And during that period, we have seen our schools continue to graduate young men and young women barely able to read and write, rendered unemployable. Jamaica can't continue to operate like this. We can do better.
Harry, brutal at that time. But 18
and he was being rather kind as well, neighbor.
Wow, he was being kind.
Yeah, because when you look at it, neighbor, to see the very lives of how many people, this isn't a neighbor, and this is why I say it's extremely kind. The one thing that humanity has, that if you take it away from them, we seek to exist, and that is hope.
Hope.
If you listen to what he said, there are persons who didn't even try. So it means they were hopeless.
The country was hopeless.
Because if the people are hopeless, neighbor, the country is, because they are the biggest resources of our country.
But isn't that why murders unaliving went to 1,500? Oh God.
And it was very in that period, neighbor, because people, that was the time when I want to say the theoretical things that were put forward in terms of criminology and what happened. That was the root cause of it. Because no, I have no hope, but I still want to survive. So guess what? Anybody who has a little more than I do, may want it. And by any means necessary,
thank
I
you,
am
Kate.
going to get it because I am stuck in the need to survive.
Yes.
And that is something that's critical. And you know what happens as well, neighbor? Any opportunity, whether it means me well or not, once an opportunity comes, I'm going to take it. And that was also a thing where we saw political alignment with criminal activities. Because no, you're so down and out that I can throw scraps at you and still control you. That also reduced the possibility or the probability of a good social and moral fabric that a society needs to thrive.
Yes. It tears up the social fabric of the society. Torn.
Yeah. And then no, persons will now push and highlight and praise immorality because immorality was giving them a chance to going a little bit above survival mode. So you can't tell me now, say, me I do this act, me not care, me can finally live a little. And we can see one of the best films out of Jamaica embodied that. I think many persons here would have watched Shutters. It gave you the full information that you needed. It wasn't just a movie. It was a lived reality by many Jamaicans. Just that it was cleaned up as much as possible for viewership. But Scratchy probably can't tell you because Scratchy is a streets man. He would have known off and lived through situations that is similar to that. And you couldn't. This is one of the things. That was those persons' truth. It wasn't the overall truth, but you couldn't tell them that wasn't justified for their very existence. Because when you put a man in a decision-making moment where he has to choose from the necessary evils, you can't tell him he has chosen wrong. You can't tell him that his actions will prevent a nation from thriving, because he's not seeing beyond that. So this is why I say the monstrosities of those irresponsible acts in those times led to all the socio-economical issues we've had. Things that we shouldn't have based on the resources that was available to us. Based on, and these were in the natural form, which means we could have done great deal with it. And it's one of the things why we always will be compared to Singapore. Because Singapore had far less compared to us and did extremely well to now be known as the hub of Asia. And where we are, what are we doing? We never ever get a chance, neighbor, to get even 10% of that. It is now we're trying to fix the wrongs, which is why in a micro level from the individual who said they're feeling the impacts of it, it is no different that they now have to be building and trying to make wrongs that they didn't contribute to.
Are you telling
they're
my
taking up
that the PNP robbed them of a better life?
Significantly better life, neighbor.
PNP robbed them of a better life?
Neighbor, generations are suffering because of that. And that is the fact. Feel how you want to feel about it. I don't care. Deal with the information. Deal with the data. Go and go argue with it. Get your affiliations out of the way. Look at the actions and lack of thereof.
Hold on for me, Harry. Hold on, let me take this in. Top of the night to you is 23 minutes to 10 o'clock. What a heavy statement tonight. That the People's National Party have robbed Jamaicans of a better life. Oh! Well, you know, this came out of a caller today from Canada. Told me that he's where he is today because the PNP robbed him. Do you feel like that, listening to me, you feel like the PNP has robbed you? Goodness gracious me, I wish I could get someone from the PNP. Mr. Paulwell? What a sad night. Oh my goodness. Release the people. Huh? Shackles coming off. Shackles of ignorance. See? Your eyes are being opened. Sam Cook, oh, Wednesday night. Noel Watson, how you doing, sir? on up to 10 o'clock with Harry. 21 minutes to go. PNP. Oh my goodness. Watch it. You know, there's a principle called egalitarianism. Egalitarianism, eh? Speaks of equality. Speaks of equality for the people. Egalitarianism suggests that everyone should have equal rights, equal opportunities and status, regardless of their background, social class, gender, race, or any other distinguished characteristic. Well, this is not an egalitarian society. Jamaica is not an egalitarian society. At least not economic egalitarianism. Definitely not social egalitarianism. Not even political egalitarianism. And in an egalitarian society, we strive for equity. Now, we're going to have to leap a leap of transformation. Embracing a radical rebirth. It's reauthoring the narrative, rewriting the script of history. And that's what Jamaica is doing now, rewriting the script of history. But this rewriting the script of history demands an existential acknowledgement of past shortcomings. Not to lament, but as a catalyst for metamorphosis. That's what we're doing tonight, looking back to look forward. Because, listeners, change is the only constant, you know. Change is the only constant. And so by acknowledging the fluidity of history, you reposition yourselves as agents of progress rather than custodians of a troubled past. And quite frankly, Jamaica's past is quite troubled. Economic past, very troubled. We have to articulate a vision that transcends the binary of the past to an ethos that speaks to the deepest aspirations of the Jamaican people. The Jamaican people, they need change. Oh, tied to the past shackles. to Harry and for a wrap, 16 minutes on wrap. You're still the one. Great, great. I would love them to run. Endeavor to right the wrongs. Yeah. IAP Israel. Well. Here are we. Coming out of the shackles and rebirth. So Harry.
Neighbor.